This presentation is for the Nuclear Wolves team. We are the Nuclear Power Probe group of E101 Section 18 for the fall 2017 semester. In the first step of the design cycle, which is define the problem, we had to create a light sensing probe that could reach into the nuclear reactor and measure the intensity of the blue light that is emitting due to Cherenkov radiation. In the second step of the design cycle, which is searching for solutions, we had to question ourselves on several aspects, most of which were involving the materials involved, such as the wire, type, and amount, the sensor that we would need to put at the end of the probe to measure the Cherenkov radiation's intensity, the waterproofing of the probe itself so that the water would not leak in and destroy it, and the measures we would have to take to make sure we didn't exceed the $40 budget, since this probe would take expensive materials. The third step of the design cycle, which was narrowing and selecting our methods we would use, we chose to use photodiodes because of their accurate readings and their cost effectiveness. Speaker wire was chosen for the wire because it can come in very large quantities at a low cost so that we could stay under our budget. We had to get PVC cement, duct tape, and rubber bands to make sure that the probe would be waterproof and that the photodiode would not be destroyed by any water leaking through the probe's exterior. For the fourth step of the design cycle, we had to actually build the probe. The first step was to cement the PVC components together using the cement and primer kit to make sure that it reached the proper length of 10 feet to reach inside of the pool, and it was also waterproof. Next, we had to run 15 feet of wire inside of the probe so that it could reach the diode at the end and also reach outside of the probe so that we can measure it. Then we had to solder the diode to the wire, ensuring that the connection was strong enough to properly read the intensity of the Cherenkov radiation's blue light. We had to add a clear covering afterwards, which happened to be a Ziploc bag, a lot of rubber bands, and a lot of duct tape. This made sure that while it was waterproof, the light could properly reach inside to the probe. Then it was tested to be waterproof inside of a sink.
Unfortunately, our team was not added to the mailing list for testing, meaning that there was no indication of when we might test, and so we were unable to actually test our probe. We were able to confirm, however, that it gave readings when attached to a voltmeter, as well as that it was waterproof, meaning that the probe was structurally sound. As a result of our inability to test, we were practically unqualified for the highest marks at Fed, and our placement showed as much. The judges, however, were impressed with our level of knowledge, and our probe seemed to be up to par with the other groups, so overall, Fed Day was a success.
In our group project, we faced a lot of challenges, but in the end, we managed to overcome those unpleasant difficulties. For example, the first problem is the probe. The probe had 10 feet length, and it was really inconvenient for us to operate. We couldn't cut that thing into pieces because that was made of cement. We had to take care of those stuff in my chemo center. As I remember, we needed one person to hold the probe, another person to measure the wire, and the third person to cut the tape. The second problem is the diodes. The diodes were very hard to obtain, and it was hard to adjust. Therefore we needed to slowly, carefully to adjust and coordinate. And finally, we figured out step by step. The third problem is the breadboard. The breadboard actually didn't fit the PVC. As a result, our team chose not to use the breadboard. Instead, we decided to use the single diode soldered onto the wires. The fourth problem is the plastic covering. The plastic cover for the devices is in some ways delicate. And that's why we utilize the Ziploc bag rather than plastic cover. During the group project, we have learned how to tackle any issues. Whenever we met a problem, we stayed strong and never gave up. That's the key secret we could succeed in the end.
The next slide is what we would do differently. The first thing we would do differently is try to use screw-on modules on the ends of the PVC pipes so that they could be moved without hassle. We would also ensure that the small pieces, for example the breadboard, would fit in the PVC pipe before we got them. Another thing we would do differently is hold more team meetings and attempt to have more team communication so that the design for the probe could be perfected. The next slide is our advice to 2018 incoming freshmen in engineering. Obviously, the first tip is to make sure you're on the mailing list for testing so that you would actually get to test your design. The best way to do that would be to communicate with your advisors regularly and be sure that you're always in the loop when it's concerning Fed Day events. The last piece of advice we have for 2018 freshmen in engineering is to actually be sure to learn the material concerning your assignment and even go above and beyond if you can with the research because your physical project might not go according to plan, and it's a good way to prove yourself at Fed. The final slide is the sources. We have a few various sources concerning Cherenkov radiation, nuclear engineering, nuclear reactors, and then all the materials that we needed.